Good evening and welcome to the monthly meeting of the Arlington Board of Zoning Appeals, which is also known as the BZA. I'm Judy Freshman, Chairman of the Board. Thank you. The board's made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. In addition to myself, we have Charles Smith, Ian Tamales, Paul Melnick, and Peter Owen. Also present is a professional staff, including Amanda Clement, who serves as Secretary of the Board of Zoning Appeals, Arlo Vavon, Zoning Administrator, Clifton Hogan and Blake Bowen, assistants to the zoning administrator, and Simon Keynes, administrative technician. We thank you for being here and extend a warm welcome. To avoid disruptions, we ask that you please turn your cell phones or pagers off or put them in the silent mode. On the front table, you'll find copies of the staff report for each case before us this evening. I recommend that if you've not yet seen that report for your case, that you get a copy and review it before your case is called. The board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county zoning ordinance adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests with the county board. This board does have the authority to do 3 things. We can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1 and 2 family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. We can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. And we can decide appeals of the decisions of the zoning administrator. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary in the public interest, including limiting the duration of the use permit. In order to approve a use permit, the law requires that the board find that the proposal meet conditions and that the use permit will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related policies of the county. To do this, the BZA shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of development with the surrounding neighborhood because the structure's overall footprint, size, and placement are similar to the structures on the properties surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historic features, and/or significant trees and foliage. When granting variances, the board must deem that the strict application of the ordinance would produce undue hardship, that the hardship is not generally shared by other properties in the same zoning district, and that the authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property, and the character of the district will not be changed by the granting of the variance. When deciding appeals of the zoning administrator, the board must determine if the administrator acted correctly. This evening, cases will be called and a brief staff report and recommendation will be given. Following that, board members will ask any questions of the staff they may have. Next, applicants or their representatives will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. If they choose to make a comment, they must come forward to the podium so their comments can be recorded for the record. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip, which is available on the table in the front of the room. After we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may ask questions of any speaker, but does not permit and will not condone any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. We've deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient. For use permits and variances, 5 minutes for applicants, 3 minutes for representatives of organizations, and 2 minutes for individuals. For appeals, 20 minutes for appellants, 3 minutes for representatives of organizations, and 2 minutes for individuals. After the board has gathered all the information they need and discussed the case, it will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the Circuit Court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you're welcome to stay for the balance of the session or leave at your convenience. Again, thank you for being here this evening. Please call the first case.
V-11198-16-VA-1 is a variance request by Kenneth and Ginger Brown to increase the allowable main building footprint to 3,173 square feet instead of 2,772 square feet as required. This is regarding a new screened porch and a bathroom addition. The staff recommendation is to defer this case to the December 14th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
I would just note that this is a deferral that we agreed to here first. It's out of order in case you're properly confused.
Madam Chair.
And Mr. Owen.
Thank you. Madam Chair, due to a longstanding acquaintance that I have with the applicants, I'm intending to recuse myself from this matter, and I intend to vote present.
Thank you. Ms. Malice.
Sorry. I'm evaluating whether I have a similar conflict, but I will vote to defer.
Okay. Anyone else? You have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Smith.
I move that we defer the item number V-11198-16-BA-1 to the, what meeting? December meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Melnick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Present.
Thank you. And we now revert to the published agenda, already in progress.
V-11173-16-UP-1 is a use permit request to permit a setback of 19.1 feet to the eve from the North Culpeper Street right-of-way instead of 21 feet as required, and 17.3 feet to the wall of the home from the rear property line instead of 25 feet as required, and 17.3 feet to the areaway and 17 feet to the eve from the rear property line instead of 21 feet as required, and a distance of 5.5 feet between the wall of the home and the existing accessory building instead of 8 feet as required. This is regarding a new second-story cantilevered rear addition and second-story addition above the existing home. Staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Hearing none, I have a speaker slip. Are you speaking for the applicant? Patrick Harold?
Madam Chair, members of the board, hello. Thank you for allowing us to come back a couple months later. I appreciate that the staff has given us their recommendation this time. We revised the drawings to try to address some of the concerns that were brought up last time, and we hope that we've succeeded in that. So, again, members of the community have all been informed. Everyone is still very much on board with the project, and we hope that you guys are too. So, questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for the applicant's agent? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is your pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Melnick.
All right. In case V-1117316UP1, I'd like to move that the Arlington Board of Zoning Appeals grant the use permit in this case according to the attached resolution with the conditions as stated.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Melnick, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next case, please.
V-11188-16-UP-1 is a use permit request to permit a setback of 15 feet, or I'm sorry, a setback of 13 feet to the porch base and 12 feet to the porch eave from the North Nelson Street right-of-way instead of 25 feet as required, and 3 feet to the porch base from the left side property line and 3.8 feet to the porch base from the right side property line instead of 10 feet as required, and 6 feet to the wall from the left side property line and 6 feet to the wall from the right side property line instead of 10 feet as required, with an aggregate side yard of 12 feet instead of 18 feet as required. This is regarding a new 2-story rear addition and an enclosed front porch. The staff recommendation is to grant the subject use permit with conditions.
Thank you. Questions for staff? I have one speaker, Skylar Aarons. Just to clarify, you have 5 minutes, not 20.
Thank you.
This is not an appeal. Go ahead.
As always, thank you to the board for the opportunity to present this, and thank you to staff for working with us the past 3 months. I realize you guys get the staff reports and look over this stuff prior, so I won't take up too much of your time. We did get a bunch of support from the neighbors in the community. We feel it's kind of the most modest request we could make given the substandard lot condition that was existing. Just to put it plainly, the front is existing, and we'd just merely like to replace that and stay within that footprint. In the rear, we are doing a newer structure in the rear, but it is going to be a lot further away from the property lines than the current existing dwelling. So we hope this obviously gets approved, and I leave it to you for any questions you have of me.
Thank you. Questions?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen?
For the porch that you're planning to replace, would that still be screened in, or are you planning to build walls around it?
I believe we had requested to enclose it, like replace the screen with glass windows, if you will. It will stay pretty much as you see it, the same construction with the knee wall, and just merely replacing the screen with windows.
Okay. All right.
Other questions? Hearing none?
Oh, I actually do have another question.
Show
I didn't see a signature from the next door neighbor at 1900 Nelson. That's the neighbor immediately to the south. Did I miss that, or have you made contact with that?
I personally
homeowner?
have not. I think the owner had reached out to him. I don't know if they came to a consensus. I know they got the same notices and everything to object if they wanted to, so I'm not aware.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Smith?
is that, you see the list, Mr. Owen? That second one from the bottom?
It's 1900 North Oakland Street. It says different street.
But it's, there's no 1900 Oakland. Yeah, it is way,
There
the other
is on
side,
the back side.
yeah, on the back
Yeah,
side,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the backside of,
On the next street, opposite.
oh, right, yes. Yep.
Any other questions for the applicant's agent?
So I guess I have a question for staff. Do you agree that the schematics presented with this application show window placement the same place that there is currently screening in the front? So basically what I'm getting at is the applicant has just, are you the applicant or the agent of the applicant?
Agent of the applicant.
The agent of the applicant has asserted that there will be glass where there's currently screens, which to me seems very similar to the current condition. But if the windows were smaller, then I could see people feeling it was a more imposing structure. And so what I'm wondering is, if we approve this as advertised or as proposed by staff, will there be a binding requirement that the windows be as just described? Or because we've had at least one other applicant since I've been on the board where further modifications were made during the building process that were different from what neighbors expected. So my question is there a binding understanding that where there's screening now, there will still be transparency? Or would that be something we would need to add into the language of the resolution?
I think I would agree that what they're showing appears to show window placement in the same location as the screening. Whenever we were working towards this request, that was something that we had questioned and talked about. And it appeared from the drawings that refer to it as a screen porch versus what referred to it as an enclosed porch, that the size of these openings were roughly the same for transparency. I think if we wanted that to be reiterated through the resolution, that perhaps we should have maybe stronger language
Okay,
suggested.
thank you.
Other questions?
One question.
Mrs.
That-
Smith.
The window that's on the house, that's behind the screen porch, that's going to continue to exist, isn't it?
Correct. Yes, sir.
That's the strangest. Do you know if they're going to be sliding, if they're going to be opening?
I don't think they've-
openable at all?
I mean, they will operate, they will be openable, but I don't think they'll be fixed panels.
It's just an enclosed porch. It's not it's not changing in any way. It's still a porch, but as opposed to screening, it's going to have.
But typically, you might make that into a door.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's already a door. There's a front door.
Yeah.
And you've got the window next to it. I mean, usually they try to take that wall out and expand the living room into but they're not doing that at all.
No. That's the reason we're doing the rear addition, is create more space.
Right.
I think the plat shows it as enclosed. The drawings are vague, a little vague. So I would suggest perhaps just adding it to the condition.
And we accept
Condition
all.
one that acknowledges the submitted drawings.
And we agree to that, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? You ready for a motion? As amended. Mr. Owen, are you drafting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It'll just take me another couple of seconds, I think.
Pause. Music. You want to sing something? Want to sing? Sing. Okay. That's what he was missing, right? He doesn't have his.
Thank you. I'm finished with my drafting.
Mr. Owen.
Madam Chair, I would offer a motion. I move in the case V11188-16-UP1 that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution approving the use permit, subject to the conditions listed in the resolution, plus one additional condition, number 5, reading as follows. The applicants agree that they will document the size of the existing front screening and that window transparency of the enclosed porch will be no less in area than the existing screening.
No, and just forgive me, I'm speaking from building permit purposes. That's my familiarity. When you say that, are you saying that the windows cannot be any smaller than what the current existing window screen footprint is?
Yes.
Okay. The only challenge I would have with that is there is a wall bracing code, and for instance, with a screened-in porch, and this is from an engineering side, with screened-in porches, wind blows through the screen, and so there's no need for bracing for any type of racking. When you have windows, when you enclose a structure, you have minimum wall bracing requirements that do require some panels in the corners, if you will. So for instance, if you're looking at what is on the corner, it's probably like a 4x4 or 6x6 that holds it up. We would need probably at least 24 inches off of the corners of solid wall on each corner of the structure, and that's for structural integrity purposes.
So, go ahead. Please go ahead.
There was a question for Mr. Owen. You're talking about a maximum.
No.
Oh, I see.
He's saying
what
the
you're
same.
No.
The transparency because
You
of,
said the same, right?
Yes, it wouldn't have to be in the same configuration as I had just proposed. I mean, it could be a different shape, right? So they could be taller instead of wider. But I don't really want to push that too far. I think the applicant's explanation is a reasonable one, and I don't mind making further adjusting the language to
Building code or something.
Yeah, so my motion hasn't been seconded, so I don't want to be out of order to further discuss it, but
Can we have a second to the motion, please?
Second the motion for
Thank you.
purposes of discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Owen?
so, Madam Chair, for discussion purposes, I'll say I would possibly be interested in adding the phrase, "subject to any additional wall bracing requirements," to the end of the last condition, and I wanted to see if my colleagues have any reaction to that.
Madam Chair, I don't have a problem with accommodating engineering needs, but I realize that what's going to be built is going to be different than what we see both in this picture and in the drawings if you have to maintain 24 inches on the corner.
It's going to be very similar. We plan to maintain a lot of windows in the front and glass, and they do want them on the sides as well. It's just for, again, wall bracing purposes, and we actually indicate that clearly on the building plans. When we do the building permit drawings, on the floor plans, we indicate the panels themselves as wall bracing panels.
Chair, I just, I think Mr. Owen is right on. It reminds me of a case we had maybe 2 months ago or 3 months ago where it came back and the window that we approved was just much different, and they had a rationale for why it was different, but it was not what met the needs of the neighbors who were marginally in support to start with. Yeah. That was the tipping point. And we don't, there isn't anyone signed up to say, we don't like this, but I guess my concern is if you have to, for engineering reasons, have more width on that corner, they're not going to look the same because at all, and it's going to be much narrower. Because I'd suggest that your lot's 25. This structure is how wide as it is, 19 feet or something. Let's say 18.2. So, what is that? 30. That might be 36. Each of those might be 3 feet.
Correct, probably.
So you're going to 2 feet of that, even a foot and a half, even 18 inches of that, it's going to make that corner look a lot different than what we see. I'm just saying, I'm not opposed to it looking differently, but you can run into a problem with proving XYZ that looks like this and building, LMNOP, and that could be problematic for a neighbor.
We understand, and that's why we're trying to go for the similar look. It's just a matter of trying to meet the minimum building code requirements at the same time.
Ms. Malice?
Does your bracing have to be symmetrical on the two corners? Can you have more bracing on the side and less on the front?
There's different wall bracing methods. I could bore you with the different methods there are, but for the simplistic one, the most easiest one, and the most less intrusive panel, it would be a minimum of anywhere from 18 to 24 inches.
On the front?
Correct, on the front and sides, because, for instance, if you were using a continuously sheathed wood structural panel system, you would have to have a minimum 4 feet, and at anywhere within 12.5 feet of a corner. So no, it wouldn't have to be in the corner, but you would still end up with a 4-foot panel somewhere on the front of the house there that's solid, versus what I'm thinking of using is a continuously sheathed portal frame, which just requires the minimum panels on the corners, and that's it. And you could basically have all glass hypothetically in the middle if you wanted with that type of frame.
I mean, there are corners that have no framing, right? I mean,
if you do, there's some that are like pre-engineered design steel systems that you do. A lot of times you don't see that behind the facades and everything.
My opinion, having done some of these things, is that I think it's important to have as much transparency as possible. And I think the condition speaks to our intention, whether it's the corners mitigated by a solid panel instead of two with a support in the middle or something like that. I would leave up to you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
So, Madam Chair, I would now make a motion to offer by, I guess, I'll try to do it by unanimous consent, see if that speeds it up. I would ask unanimous consent to add the phrase to the end of the final condition, subject to any additional wall bracing requirements.
Everyone agree to that? Yes. Thank you.
Actually, if I could
Mr. Mullin?
clarify, so as far as requirements, I think that ought to be specified, what requirements? Are you talking about building code? Are you talking about the homeowner's requirements? I would just say that ought to be clarified, the requirements.
Building code?
Wall bracing codes under the building code.
Wall bracing code under the building code.
Under the building code.
Which the current one's VRC 2012, if you wanted to.
Okay, so by unanimous consent, I'll ask unanimous consent to have the condition in its entirety read as follows. The applicants agree that they will document the size of the existing front screening and that the window transparency of the enclosed porch will be no less in area than the existing screening, comma, subject to any additional wall bracing requirements under the building code.
Fine.
Very good. Thank you. Okay.
I don't have a problem with that, but the implication is if we're really talking about area and we're going to take square footage away from the corners, that means those windows have to be taller. To come up with the same area of transparency.
Unless that would interfere with the structural integrity.
Or the interior use, because they want some wall.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if the standard is the same area of transparency, you're saying this motion would be
That's
understood to mean that we're reducing the area of transparency to accommodate the wall bracing.
And the reduction should be minimal as possible to try to maximize the same
Well,
area.
I think if I understand Commissioner Malice correctly, there may not be a building requirement that forbids the windows to go all the way to the floor. And then they would meet this requirement. And because they could meet this requirement, then they must not do anything else because they can meet it. Because there's no building code impediment the way that I've drafted it. And the question is that a burden that we'd want to place on the homeowner?
Is that our intention?
Right. And
So the question would be, does the bracing reduce the area of transparency?
so I guess I would ask the applicant, is the base of are you already at, for some reason of usefulness or safety or building code, had you already contemplated bringing the windows as low as they could go? Is there some reason why?
I would think two issues could come up with that. One, if your intent is to keep the same look, then that would definitely not be the same look. That would be one. Two, I believe functionality would bring it in, is that being an entry, you have furniture and things going against those lower walls, which you would not want to obstruct taller windows with. I think those two issues come into play with that.
So perhaps it would make sense, instead of saying subject to any additional wall bracing requirements, to say something like, but the width may be reduced to conform to any additional wall breaking requirements. Okay.
Is that clear to staff?
So, Madam Chair,
Again.
may I try it from the top now, one more time? I'd ask unanimous consent to have a fifth condition that reads, the applicants agree that they will document the size of the existing front screening and that window transparency of the enclosed porch will be no less in area than the existing screening, but the width may be reduced to conform to any additional wall bracing requirements under the building code. And furthermore, I think, I'll just say in the record, my intention in offering this is not to force the applicant to build the windows all the way to the floor just to conform to this. So if the code enforcement of the building permit people or whatever are wondering, they listen to the hearing, they don't have to make it go all the way to the floor. That's not what we're trying to do.
To me, Madam Chair, it sounds like really an exception to the equal before, equal after transparency. Okay.
Yes, that's right. That's my intention. So that's my unanimous consent request.
All agreed?
See? Yes.
Okay. Now, we have a motion.
I'll second.
It's already on the
Hey,
floor.
Ms. Malice, Seconded. With an additional condition. Final version, unanimous consent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Thank you.
Thank you to the board and staff.
Next case, please.
And the chair abstained. 311.
V-11196-16-VA-2 is a variance request for an addition exceeding 50% of the aggregate floor area of the existing building on a lot that does not meet the area requirement of the R2-7 zoning district. Staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution denying the variance.
Questions for staff? Hear from the applicant, please. Is the applicant here? Please come forward.
Hello, good evening. I'm the applicant. I'm the owner of 763 South Harrison Street. And as a mother of 2 children and my husband, as a growing family, we decided to do an extension to the rear part of the house. Will be more than 50% of the requirement in that zone. And it was being approved before we purchased the house in 2010. It was already approved the extension with the same footprint and with the condition to construct in 1 year. But we couldn't do the construction, and we are trying to could be again approved, so we can build again. We can build the extension.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Mr. Owen.
I have some questions, but I think they're for staff, probably. So there are many, many other homes in this street, in this block, in this immediate neighborhood that received variances or otherwise have built similar additions. And I'm wondering, is this request out of scale or out of character? Or is there? I mean, I think in the staff report there was a mention that it's maybe further to the rear lot line than some of these others. But in terms of the coverage, can you say whether or not the coverage for this application is different in character from those in the surrounding homes that were all granted variances?
So, no, this request is consistent with the footprint sizes of those that were granted in the past. I would just note that staff has consistently recommended denial for these requests.
And indeed, staff recommended denial when this request was made 5 or 6 or so years ago.
Correct.
And the board voted 5-0 to approve, or 4-0 to approve it anyway. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Malice.
Can staff say whether they are enabled to ever recommend the adoption of a variance?
I'm sorry, can you repeat
Are
it?
you able ever to recommend the adoption of a variance?
I would say that we are, whenever we feel that it's meeting the criteria for the variance.
Okay. So the hardship clause,
Correct, right.
when you feel there's a defined hardship.
Whenever we see a defined hardship or we feel that the use of the property is being unreasonably restricted.
Which you did not feel in this case.
We did not feel in this case.
Other questions?
Yes. Can someone tell me what the what the applicant is proposing in terms of total coverage? I think that may be in the report, but I was a little confused on the point. Do you know the percentage coverage that you would have if you got your permit?
If I'm not wrong, we're trying to do coverage of, let me see.
I don't see it.
So the question that I'll have after that answer is the percentage coverage different than the percentage coverage allowed for a full-size lot in that zoning district? Or are they proposing proportionately the same coverage that would be allowed in a full-size lot? So if, for example, after this addition, they would have 41% coverage, would that percentage coverage be allowed in that zoning category? That's my question.
So if I can answer to that, I don't think the lot coverage is the issue with this request. It's just the fact that because it's the undersized lot, they're limited to the expansion.
Oh, I understand that completely. And I think that staff's analysis was precise on that point. And I'm asking a different question to understand the equities involved, right? So one of the questions that I ask myself when I am considering a case of variance is what was the legislature's goal in imposing these requirements? And often the legislature has multiple goals. And one of the goals of the coverage requirements is, for example, stormwater runoff. Another goal is impact on neighboring homes. So when you're talking about a restriction on an undersized lot, the county board's rule that you can't expand on an undersized lot under specified conditions seemed to me, and I'm only speaking for myself, mostly geared toward the impact on neighbors, right? Whereas, so that's sort of in its own tranche. But in order to examine the other policy goal, which is this house unfairly imposing stormwater runoff, I would want to know how it compares proportionately to other homes in the same zoning category. So let me try it from the complete back end, which is what is the coverage limit for a full-size lot in the R2-7? What's the lot coverage limit for a standard size lot?
With or without a garage?
That would apply to this home configuration were it on a standard size lot. I suspect that they're under. That's my guess, but I wanted to confirm that.
Well, for a lot in the R27 district, which is not used for a one-family dwelling, which semi-detached would be classified as a two-family, the allowable lot coverage is 56%.
Okay, and are they proposing less than 56% coverage after this addition?
They are.
Great, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant or staff? Okay, thank you. No speakers?
No.
Madam Chair? Sorry.
Mr. Smith?
I recognize the hardship in this lot, and therefore I'd move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the alternative resolution granting approval of the request in V-11196-16-VA2, subject to the conditions that are in the alternative resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Melnick. Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Melnick.
Madam Chair.
Discussion.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I think this is a difficult case. I think that it's not super clear to me that if this were the first house in the neighborhood to be making this application, or even if this variance had not previously been granted on this property, I'm not sure that I would feel comfortable voting in favor of the variance. But in this case, I think there's a certain principle of the law of the case, as we say in the legal profession, which is that the Board of Zoning Appeals has already adjudicated this. And the reason for the one-year expiration is in case the law tightens up or we learn of new restrictions or there's some tightening that we want to impose, that we'll have a chance to impose it. In this case, if anything, the opposite is true. The law has loosened up a little bit on variances, and there is And any new, I'm sure conditions have in fact been adopted. So although I may not have voted in 2010 for this variance, since this body granted the variance in 2010, I don't see that anything that has happened in the intervening time that justifies no longer granting it. So I'm going to vote yes.
Thank you. Other comments?
Madam Chair, I have a similar conflict or issue with sort of the reasoning of granting these. We don't have dates of when these other variances were adopted. And I know there's been changes to the ordinance, tightening up variances, loosening. Oh, you have the dates?
Well, it says 04 and 06.
Not in the place you were looking for it. It's in a different paragraph.
It's in which
It's
paragraph?
on the chart.
Well, each of these numbers.
These
when
numbers
that,
tell you, oh, those are 06, 04.
Yeah.
I'm still newbie here. Okay. I don't know what the conditions were under which those were granted. If our process for evaluating variances back before we had use permits really changed things. But I don't think I'm going to go into a deep analysis here to figure out if that's the case, and I'll rely on staff's assertion that these are similar and that the circumstances were similar.
Mr. Melnick.
I'm in agreement with Mr. Owen. Being an attorney too, I agree that this exact same thing's been adjudicated under the standards, and so that's very persuasive to me.
Thank you. We have a motion.
I think the motion's pending. Yep.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Variance is granted.
Thank you.
Second part here.
Please don't leave yet.
Don't.
Now the use permit. That's okay. Just have a seat. We'll be right with you.
That was the harder part, though.
Yes, that's true. Staff, please.
V-11196-16-UP-1 is a use permit to request to permit a setback of 21.2 feet to the wall from the rear property line instead of 25 feet as required, and 20.2 feet to the eave from the rear property line instead of 21 feet as required. This is for a new two-story rear addition. The staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution denying the use permit request.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Can I start by saying, is this the same use permit parameter that was approved in 2010? This is a different proposal, since that was the subject of the previous action.
Yeah, I believe the requested setback in this scenario is the same as what was requested and granted in 2010.
Thank you. Other questions for staff?
Well, but in 2010, it was only one item, right? Was there both a variance and a use permit in 2010?
I think in 2010 it came through as one request.
Right, because the law was different then, right? So they only needed the variance, right?
I believe so.
But my point was that what they're asking now is what has been approved by whatever means.
The substance of it, the actual,
Yes.
right.
Thank you. Other questions?
I would be interested to know if the zoning administrator's recommendation is the same as it was 5 minutes ago, because the rationale 5 minutes ago was this would require a variance and they don't support the variance, but now we've approved a variance. So do you still have the same recommendation?
I would say we do still have the same recommendation. Now that we're considering this under the use permit, we're looking at compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. And as this staff report shows, even though other surrounding homes have achieved sizable additions, they were additions that were achieved within the required setbacks. So we don't have similar instances of encroaching setbacks.
Thank you. Comments from the applicant? Is there anything further you'd like to add?
Well, I really don't have knowledge about the these concepts of the building and permits, but what we ask you is, since we are a growing family, we want a place to grow with my family, and we love the community, we love our neighborhood, and I saw other houses that they have the extensions and the similar footprint that we are asking, and I think if you grant this approval for do the extension, that will be a relief for my family.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Malice?
Am I correct that this, since the setbacks are greater, that the size of the addition is greater than the other additions on the similar lots? Or that at least they extend further back into the setbacks?
So I think we see a range in the size of the additions. I think what the applicant has proposed here is similar to the larger additions that we see. But on the other lots where this size of an addition was achieved, they just had the space to still accommodate the 25-foot rear.
So it's a lot size, different lot sizes?
Shorter?
And no, the lot size is similar. I'm not sure about maybe the front of the house is pushed back a little bit further.
If you look at the map, it appears from the schematic that these houses are scooched a little bit farther back than the other on the row.
Madam Chair, and also to add, the rear lot line is not parallel to the front lot line, and so at one point it's actually closer than, there is a point where it's further than 21.2 feet, I think, but the closest point on that angled lot line is 21.2, I think it's what the number is.
So, Madam Chair,
Mr. Owen?
I just observed that the applicant has obtained the written approval of both adjacent neighbors, and that the rear neighbor is a entirely different zoning category, and in fact is built out to have an enormous expanse of parking lot. Actually, I think this backs up into the parking lot area.
Yes.
So there's a hillside, there's a grade change, and then there's also a sort of a vegetative area in the rear, and then a parking lot, and then it's a completely different zoning category with garden apartments that are located quite a far distance away. So I think the impact on the neighbors for this particular location is far less than we usually encounter for this kind of situation. So I think it's a particularly low impact request.
Other comments? Questions? Motion?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Malice?
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution, the alternate resolution approving the use permit V-11196-16-UP-1 with conditions as shown in the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Malice, seconded by Mr. Smith.
Madam Chair, I
Mr.
just want to
Smith.
make one point. Mr. Owen was pointing out this schematic of the zoning district, and there's a triangle parcel at the bottom on 8th Road that actually came before us, and we denied the applicant's petition to put something on that lot because it was too small.
Interesting.
It's
Thank
owned by the AHR Housing Partnership, I think.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Next case, please.
V-11197-16-UP-1 is a use permit request to permit a setback of 9.3 feet to the porch base from the left side property line instead of 10 feet as required for a new screened porch. Staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff? Hear from the applicant, please.
Hi, Brian Doster here for the applicant, or I am the applicant along with my wife. Just wanted to add, I did not note in the staff report or the file that I had submitted 4 additional statements from my neighbors, none of which are opposed to our project. I had submitted them, but I don't see them in the staff report or the file. They were after my original application.
We have 4 in our report. Are you talking about 4 additionals?
4 additional,
Okay.
yes, including the neighbor immediately behind my house at 1708 North Utah, if you look at the map, and then some neighbors up 17th Street who have a visual view of the addition. And the only other thing I wanted to add, unless you have questions, is as you can see from the photo, we're doing this a little backwards, and I'm sorry about that. We had some miscommunication with both the building process and our contractor about this. So as you can see, the structure is substantially built, and I would have preferred to have done this in the proper order, and I'm sorry about that. But one benefit of that is that all of our neighbors can see exactly what it looks like, and none of them have expressed any concern about it. So if you have any further questions about that, I'm happy to answer.
If you want to include those 4 additional letters of support, you can give those to staff.
Okay, great.
Questions for the applicant?
So you have letters of support from 4409 and 4401,
Yes.
as well as 1708.
As well as 1708, 4413, 4417, and 1714 North Utah. The only neighbor I have not yet been able to contact is 1708.
That's the 2 houses behind you.
Yeah, 2 houses, I'm sorry, 1714. I have 1718, but I was unable to reach our neighbor at 1714.
Okay.
That all have some kind of visual of the area.
That's good.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Malice.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution approving the use permit V11197-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed in the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Malice, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next case we've already heard, Ginger Brown. Next case, please.
-11199-16-VA-1 is a variance request to permit a total lot coverage of 49.4% instead of 48% as permitted. This is regarding a new rear stoop. Staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution denying the variance.
Questions for staff? Can you hear from the applicant, please?
Madam Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the board, we appreciate the opportunity to explain the undue hardships we're facing. I want to start by emphasizing the bottom line here. All we are asking for is a set of steps, not an occupiable space, not a recreational space, nothing extravagant. We're looking for safe access and an entrance or egress to the backyard, which we do not have. I want to provide some quick background. We purchased this newly constructed house in April of 2016. We're not involved in the design. We're not involved in the construction of the house. The lot is an unusual topography, the fact that the front yard slopes steeply, both in the north and the west direction. At the top of the slope is the front entrance of the house. The back of the house has a much lower topography. Therefore, the back door is significantly higher than the ground elevation. As you enter the house, you have a long hallway that leads you to the very back of the house. Back of the house is where the main family space is. There's a family room, kitchen. There's a mudroom adjacent to the back door. The mudroom has hooks, seat, shelves, and storage area for boots and shoes. The back door, as you saw in the pictures, has a temporary railing of pressure-treated lumber across the back. It does not match any of the fit and finish of the rest of the house. The back door has an outward-facing key lock. There's actually a light switch for the two lights right next to the door. There is an outlet that's approximately 8 feet above the ground, exterior outlet. The door is positioned closest to the garage at the end of the house. The implication here is that the door was clearly designed and intended to be a point of entry and exit. As a home buyer, we felt we did our due diligence. We relied on our real estate agent, the builder, and their representations to us. When asked about the back entry, they communicated to us that they wanted to allow the future home buyer to construct what they wanted that would be only limited by the county setback requirements. There was nothing in the purchase agreement or certificate of occupancy that disclosed the restrictions we're now facing. There's no mechanism in place to advise us of any restrictions. Although the current design meets code, it doesn't meet our expectations of safety. It's unreasonable to us that a builder can design, construct the house with a door that leads to nowhere, and then misrepresent the situation to the unsuspecting homebuyer. Our sincere hope is that we are not unfairly penalized for the builder's wrongdoing. Again, I want to emphasize, all we are asking for is a set of steps out to our backyard. We want to be able to safely exit the house and enter the house, especially in the event of emergency. With that, I'll turn it over to my wife.
Good evening. I just want to emphasize that with this house, we found our dream home. We stretched our budget as much as we possibly could because we thought we found a home here in Arlington that we could be happy in for a very, very long time. And never did I imagine that I would be standing here before the board pleading for steps out my back door so that my family can enjoy our backyard, and most of all, so I can keep my family safe in the event of an emergency. In the event of a fire in the kitchen or gas fireplace in the family room, we currently have no safe exit out of our house. Our option is a 9-foot drop out of a window. If my kids are in the backyard and have an accident, get injured, or get approached by a stranger or even an aggressive dog, they have no way of safely making it back into the house. From the kitchen to the backyard, it's just under 200 feet, and I would argue that in the case of an emergency, seconds can make a difference. As a parent, the safety of my 2 kids is paramount. This puts their safety in jeopardy, and I cannot accept that. This is our hardship. To say that I have been absolutely sick over this is an understatement. We're asking for a set of stairs to safely get in and out of our house, out of a door that was clearly intended for this purpose. I just feel like we couldn't be asking for anything less. And so with that, I'm just pleading with you to let the voice of reason prevail here tonight. We did bring some pictures, and we hope that these pictures would further support our position. There's should be a set for each board member. So in the stack, you'll find first a picture depicting the front slope, which results in the back door at that 6'8" elevation. Okay.
Okay. Could you sum up, please?
Sure. You'll also find 2 pictures of the rear house showing the unsafe drop-off from the door, the external lock placed on the outside of the door, the lights. You'll see the garage positioned at the rear of the house, all indicators that this was clearly intended to be a point of egress and entry. You'll also see our 3-year-old Chloe playing in the backyard with no way of safely reaching the rear entry point. And there's a picture also that shows the inside of the house at the rear end, which shows the mudroom position right next to the door, again clearly implying this was absolutely intended to be a point of entry or egress. And then lastly, you'll see a picture of our 2 daughters, Chloe, who's 3, Scarlett, who's 1. The main reasons this is so important to us. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant?
I have some comments. So I have two kids of my own, and I totally understand about the safety of kids and what you're saying about that. What troubles me is, so you have a house, and according to the staff report, it was maxed out as far as lot coverage, and it presumably passed all the building code and inspections and everything, but it's maxed out. And whenever anything comes to us with a maxed out house, if there's something that the builder should have done, for instance, the stoop and stairway, then it's a variance situation. And what concerns me, though, is like the precedent for this, because we could, presumably there could be a lot of houses that have maxed out, and different things could be requested, that would be preferable around the perimeter that just weren't there when you bought it. And it looked like, your child is old enough that when you bought it, that you had a child, so, that you've been living in it. And I understand, your argument, but I just would be concerned about the precedent. That's something the board ought to consider, because there's a very high standard for variances. It's hardship and reasonably restricting the use of the property, but just that juxtapositioned with, these builders maxing houses out, and causing situations like this. So those are my thoughts.
Madam Chairman, I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Melnick, and don't really disagree at all. And over the years, we see these doorways to nowhere all the time, and it is, sales pitch, because they do say, oh, and you can have a wonderful deck off the back and da-da-da-da-da, without saying, oh, but you'll have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals to ask for a variance because we're right up against the rear yard setback. But this is not a deck. You're asking for something rather modest that, given the topography of the land, I think militates for some kind of relief for a rear entrance. Clearly you have to have a way to get out if that's going to be used as an entrance, and so you have to have steps. So I don't have a problem with your modest request that's going down the side. It's not, because we do have seen, and they do come in with decks. That would be a problem. And then stairs off the deck. You just want stairs off the door, which seems to me, with a small landing, to be eminently reasonable.
Other comments?
Question
Ms.
for
Malice.
staff. So what is counted in the stoop? Is it the stoop and the stairs?
For lot coverage, it would just be the stoop, the landing area. Stairs are generally omitted from that calculation.
And the landing area increases the lot coverage by 1.4%.
Sorry to interrupt. If I may, when the calculations were done, the entire stairs and the stoop.
So it's less, actually.
So if we made a mistake, then we probably made the number too high. We erred on the side of
Can we look at
caution,
that number?
calculated
It's
the
like
whole
4
thing.
by 7 is the landing?
Ma'am.
So that's
28.
28 square
It's
feet.
late.
That on a 6,000 square foot lot? 59.
Well, that's less than a percentage point if the...
Do you have a new number?
I don't have a new number at the moment. I would just like to say that whenever we looked at and reviewed the application, we did take that into account because we wanted to see how small we could get that number, with the hopes of discovering that perhaps a variance wasn't even necessary. At the time that the building permit was approved, those building permit plans showed the coverage at 47.9%. The more recent survey that the applicant submitted shows slightly larger dimensions, which put it over the 48%. So if we're going off the newer survey, anything additional is over what is permitted.
But I just, for the record, would like to clarify what it is that what is pushing this over. It's not the steps, it's just the stoop.
It's the area of the stoop.
And
Well,
that,
please go ahead.
and that what would be the new lot coverage is 49.1 without the stairs, or? See, the application has different numbers in it. It's going from 48.4 to 49.4, so it's basically saying 1.
What was that? Just the stoop?
Well, if the stoop is 28 square feet, and you're talking total lot coverage of 2,800 square feet?
No, lot, oh, I see.
The total lot coverage is 2882.36, right?
Which says
Pre-stoop. Is that correct, Ms. Clement?
I apologize. Can you repeat?
I'm sorry. On this calculation, this 48.4 is the lot coverage prior to the stoop. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
And so,
What's the difference? Yeah.
so that's 2,882 square feet. And if a stoop is 28 square feet, that's 1%, slightly less than 1%.
So the other way of looking at if this application is correct, we're adding 58 square feet.
But that was the calculation, I think, that the applicant made of including the stairway, it sounds like, because that sounds greater, that would be get you over the 1%, to get you into the, 1% would take you to above 49. So that 28 would take 49.4, that is the 1%. So you didn't factor in the stairway. That sounds like just the 28 square feet of the stoop. That's my back of the envelope math.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
So in the application that I filled out, when I did the math, what I was doing is saying if you count the stoop and the stairs, that brings you from the 2,882 to the 2,940, and the percentage is based on total lot size. So if I made the mistake of calculating all the steps in as well, that's where we got to the 49.4.
Happens to be the number that staff used as well.
Right. If we eliminate the stairs with just the stoop, it would be 48.9%.
So less than 1% over.
Less than 1% over.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Owen.
So I think my thinking is in line with some of the comments that Board Member Melnick had made. I am very concerned that these homeowners have been taken advantage of by a builder. And I'm concerned about how our action tonight may result in future homeowners being taken advantage of by not only other builders, but the very same builder who seems very clearly to me to have behaved wrongfully here. I think that when I visited the neighborhood this weekend, what I saw was infill development with a house that was not, to my mind, totally in scale with the other houses in the neighborhood. A house that has an extremely large driveway, that has a rear garage, which is not uniformly present for all the other houses on the street. I saw a lot whose topography had been reconfigured so as to likely increase the amount of stormwater runoff into a storm drain that's located 10 feet away from the house.
Push it away.
So I'm pretty concerned about the behavior of this builder, and there are potential other remedies here. There's the possibility of reducing the length of the driveway and moving the garage closer, or reducing the size of the garage by a similar amount of area. There's even, although I'm sure it would be far more expensive, there's the possibility of reconfiguring the house inside. I'm not convinced that these homeowners don't have a recourse to the builder for their being misled. It's very close in time to their purchase, and it's quite obvious that the builder has, I think the equity here is really obvious. So I'm not sure that I would feel comfortable approving this variance, and it's not out of any lack of sympathy for the position that you're in, that the applicants are in. I think it's an atrocious behavior by the builder, who surely understood the situation quite clearly and appears to have abused the applicants. But I'm concerned that we might have more such abuse if we approve this.
Madam Chair?
Yes, I'm going to just ask a question. Have you been in touch with the builder at all about this issue?
We have not been in touch with the builder about this issue.
Because I'm not sure what my ultimate decision is. I certainly am sympathetic to the comments that Mr. Melnick and Mr. Owen have made about precedent. And if the builder doesn't know that we're onto him, that's a problem. Ms. Malice.
So I am also in a similar place to my colleagues, Mr. Owen and Mr. Melnick, in terms of trying to make the responsible parties responsible, as opposed to shifting the problem to the community. So I see so I'm looking for options here to offer to the applicant. Obviously, one would be for you to, on your own, find a way to reduce coverage someplace else. And so establishing exactly how great you are over was, I think, important to know what your requirement would be. In other words, what burden you would have in order to reduce your coverage someplace else so that the stairs would not take you over. And then the second would be, once you've identified what it would take to put you in compliance with the steps, then you have a number to go back with to your real estate agent and or your builder to basically say that what you were promised, that you were going to build the stairs, is not possible, and that it's going to actually cost you some money to do that. In terms of how you conclude the process with us, we could do a deferral for you to explore what your options are in reducing your coverage, going back to the people that made these claims to you, so that you can close the loop with them and see where you stand legally with the builder or the real estate agent. So my inclination is a deferral. If you're interested in taking our suggestion and pursuing this further, and that we wouldn't defer it if you didn't want us to defer it. We would just act on it.
Could we have a moment?
Sorry?
Could we just have 1 second?
Sure.
Kick the can down the road, or
For less than 1%, but something we said, deferral that
time to talk about it, come up with a strategy. Yeah. Sure, though, I think.
Yes.
I guess I have a question, Madam Chairman. Is if we don't take the option of deferral, then you will make your determination, and then does that close the door on us in terms of options? That's, I guess, our fear is that.
Well, if this body votes to support the staff, which is to deny the variance, then you're done for now. If you have 3 votes for the back stoop.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I ask a clarification? I'm new here, still a little bit. I think I remembered maybe that there's a period of repose that if you ask for a variance or a use permit and are denied, in some situations you can't immediately reapply. You have to wait a year or something. Is that the rule here, or can someone immediately reapply for the same thing if they get a denial?
It has to be a different application.
Assume so.
Or else it's a waste of money, really, more than anything.
Madam Chair, while staff is looking at that, is there a downside to a deferral from your point of view?
I think part of it is we've got such a build-up, open to understand, I guess, where we stood. And then I guess a follow-on question would, does that deferral mean we go to the very next meeting, or do we go to the end of the line, and this might be like an April or May type
No,
event?
it could be the next meeting, or it would either be December or February, because the board doesn't meet in January. And some of that would depend on how much time you thought was necessary for outreach and trying to make your case, even though, from the builder's perspective and the realtor's perspective, no doubt it's a done deal. They've moved on.
I mean, it doesn't look like the applicants have an attorney with them advising them right now, and I'm not in a position to know the answer to this legal question, but it occurs to me one question would be, they might have a clearer position of legal recourse against the builder or the real estate agent if they had a denial in hand, right? Then they would say, we've pursued these administrative avenues and they came up short. But I don't know. I just don't know whether that's relevant or not. But that's the thing I could think of, right? That the one way a denial might make them better off is that they would have something in hand that they can go back to the builder and the real estate agent. And so if they are not disadvantaged by being able to reapply, that might be something that they wanted. I mean, it's entirely up to you. You can say what you want, but that's only my thinking about it. Has staff learned any more about
Expense, too.
reapplication?
Madam Chair, while they're looking, let me try to float a motion, because I find, even though it may not result in approval, but I find that the lot is substandard in width. Topography is unusual. It steeps greatly in the front. Those are unusual conditions that travel with the land, and therefore I'd move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the alternative resolution granting approval of V11199-16-VA1, subject to the conditions that are in the staff report's alternative resolution.
Is there a second?
Actually, I'd like it if I could have a bit of discussion on that.
Got a motion, somebody's got a second.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right. So concerning the grading, I saw in the staff report that there was only a foot difference between the front and the back. Hopefully my understanding is correct. Before the house was built, and the grading that you see, it's the builder that did it. So it's not natural to the lot. But also.
Well, but I guess not to argue, but you all didn't build this house.
Did not build
you're
this.
not
sir.
involved whatsoever.
These are the applicants in front of us, not a builder. They bought it. They didn't, I guess my point is, with respect to the topography, is that it's unusual, but the width is what really affects. It's substandard in size, and that contributes to the coverage issue.
Well,
If it were standard size, 60 feet wide, 6,000 square feet, there wouldn't be an issue.
Not for stoop.
Is that correct? If it were a standard size lot, 60 feet wide and 6,000 square feet, at that coverage level, they would be under.
Well, the lot's only 50 square feet.
Yeah, it's only
Small.
50 feet wide.
It would depend on the depth of the lot.
No, if it were 6,000 square feet.
It's almost 6, it's 59.50.
Yeah, it's 50 square feet,
It's just short by 50 square
50
feet.
square feet short. Yeah,
That's not a hardship.
that's right. So, there you are.
And looking at the proposed lot coverage with the additional 28 square foot for a stoop, if we consider that with the 6,000 square foot lot rather than 5,950, it actually brings it down to 48.5% rather than 48.9, which would still be 5% over.
It's still over.
1/2 of 1%.
Correct, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And if I could, Madam Chair, also,
So, in other words, a square this big over.
yeah, but in reference to the fact that it's substandard, the staff report does say that the subject property shares the same physical characteristics of many of the surrounding lots, and so if I could ask the staff, so is this similar to other surrounding lots as far as the substandard nature of it?
It is. The width and depth of the lot is similar to those that are surrounding.
Well, except, 2014 at the corner, 60/60. I'm not saying this is to scale, but it's close. They're generally, these tax maps are pretty close. So,
Behind are large.
yeah, well, on the corner, on the end, the ones behind, caddy corner, yeah, they're larger. So a lot look like they're right around 6,000 square feet that are very close to that. But so anyway, that's my point is that it's a substandard lot, really so little. A half of a square foot is how many square centimeters is that?
It's too late in the day for that.
Yeah.
Let's just,
So I
have a
would,
motion on
I
the
would say,
we have a motion on the floor, which is to the alternative resolution to approve it.
so I would just say, in response to that, the small amount of area needing to be accommodated also suggests that small modifications elsewhere on the site might also be easier to do in order to not require variance.
The driveway width is minimum right now, 10.5. I don't think you can legally build a driveway more narrow than that.
But the length is not required.
Well, but it's, what are you going to take out? You're going to take out a sliver, 10 feet, so it's 10 feet wide, so you're going to take out a sliver 1 inch wide to make up a half a square
Well, you
foot?
move the garage forward a foot or two, and then you've made it up.
So you're going to pick up the garage and move it.
Well, you may disagree that that's reasonable, right?
You're looking for, in this, you're only looking for a half of a square foot, a very small area, so.
Yes, indeed, a small adjustment either way.
Well, you may.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Let's address that motion. Motion is to approve the alternative, which is to approve the request for the stoop and stairs. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No?
No, I mean,
The motion fails. What's your pleasure?
I think we have come up with no restriction on reapplication, is that right? So my own inclination would be to either deny or defer at the pleasure of the applicants. Would you like to have a couple months to talk to people while this is in limbo, or would you prefer to have a denial in hand that you can yell at them with?
Choose your poison.
I guess it would be helpful to better understand the benefit of a deferral. Is it that we come to you with the exact same request, but with, I guess I just don't understand the benefit of it.
If I could, Madam Chair. The benefit of a deferral would just be that you could say that this was before us, that we gave you this option, that it wasn't looking like it would pass. And so what it is just to try to correct things, to try to get it to pass, just to rearrange things. And, and so as far as a denial, that then you actually have in hand a decision of the BZA, where you can say, they did not agree to this. So it's a decision. So it's more forceful than just a deferral. Deferral is just buying time, to come back with a correction. So
a deferral would suggest that there may be some action that you could take to bring it into compliance.
Well, if there was, but it seems unlikely that they're going to get to me, speaking only for myself, it seems actually unlikely that they will get something that even keeps a BZA action on the table, right? Because if they get under the coverage limit, they'll be by right, and they won't need to visit us at all. They'll just withdraw it.
Sure.
So I think that it may be hard to think of what they could bring to us that would still exceed the coverage limit, but that wouldn't present the policy issues that we've discussed tonight. But a deferral would allow you to try and think of them.
Yeah, if I could, I think one of the concerns is that when we first heard about the staff's recommendation to deny, of course, we kind of went reeling and started to consider what options we might have available to us in order to reduce lot coverage. Trimming down the driveway. I don't think it can go any slimmer. Removing a piece of the driveway in front of the garage, well, that's not practical. Physically moving the garage, making it smaller, tearing it down. I mean, these are all major, major costs involved here. Attorney's fees, major costs if we're going to go after the builder. I think the idea here was to come in with something very modest, the smallest thing we could ask for, just as a way to get out our back door. I mean, it's that or exorbitant amount of cost involved, no matter what avenue we go down, whether it's legally or whether it's construction. On a new build, we've already stretched our budget to its max. So
I have a question. Just out of curiosity, do you use the garage for cars, or is it mainly used as a shed?
we absolutely use it for a car. I mean, it's
Okay, I was just wondering.
that we use it, and then we, with the kids, shepherd the kids and groceries from the garage into our back door.
So
Relatively long driveway, so.
have you discussed with staff your options on reducing coverage?
I have not,
Done research.
I have not discussed with the staff what the options were. The members of the staff I spoke to was strictly on how to get through the variance process, making sure I filled out the paperwork correctly.
You know, we can't advise you on, you know, what all the options are because we don't, you know, we just don't have all the details in front of us. But, you know, obviously, if you would turn to staff and talk about what has been done in other cases to accommodate a situation like this, you might get some advice without having to, you know, get an attorney. And maybe there is a low-cost option that you can figure out.
Madam Chair.
That, you know, basically we're trying to help you find a way to meet the letter of the law here and get around, you know, which is, you know, a problem that you didn't create.
Mr. Smith.
Let me ask staff. The driveways that are just strips of concrete, is the area in between counted for lot coverage? That's what I thought. I thought we went through that with another case, and we were looking at all kinds of ways to. I was thinking of cutting out the center, just a patch would.
Oh.
Madam Chair, I think I would like to make a motion to move this forward and hope that staff can help the applicants come up with a solution. I am going to move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution denying variance V11199-16-VA-1.
I'll second.
Moved by Ms. Malice, seconded by Mr. Melnick. Let's have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No. The motion to deny is approved, 3-2.
So, Madam Chair, I would just reiterate that, in my view, this is a matter of extreme bad faith. From the evidence I've seen today, it's a matter of extreme bad faith by the builder, and I hope that the builder is somehow able to be held accountable for this situation that they clearly caused.
Thank you.
For your time.
Next case.
C-11200-16-UP-2 is a use permit request to permit a setback of 19.9 feet to the wall instead of 25 feet as required, and 19.4 feet to the eave instead of 21 feet as required from the 15th Road North right-of-way for a two-story addition. The staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff? We hear from the applicant, please.
Good evening. I'm Brian Herr. I'm here on behalf of my wife as well, Junior Herr. Sorry, this is my first time at a hearing. So in terms of support for the use permit, we were a family of 4, and then we had twins in January. So as you can imagine, the house is getting very tight very quickly, and so we would like to expand the house, a 2-level bump out, primarily to get an additional bedroom. We only have 3. It's really more like 2.5. So it would add an additional bedroom and then plus the living space below that.
Questions for the applicant?
Your house is on a big hill, right?
Relatively big, yeah.
Okay, thank you. No speakers.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Owen,
I'm ready to make a motion.
please.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution approving use permit V-11200-16-UP-2, subject to the conditions listed in the resolution.
Moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Ms. Malice. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case.
V-11201-16-UP-1 is a use permit request to permit a setback of 3 feet to the post and 2.8 feet to the eave instead of 8 feet as required for a new attached carport and existing accessory building. The staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff? We hear from the applicant, please.
Madam Chair, board members, I'd like the opportunity to say that my reason for wanting to do this project was last winter, during the heavy snowstorm, I almost got trapped in my house. I was unable to open up either my front door or my side door. And so I'd like to have covering over a front door, and on the side door, I'd like to have a carport. And I'm getting kind of old. I'll be 67 years of age in a couple of weeks, and want to reduce the amount of shoveling I have to do. And I'd like to have an area outside my side door that it slopes down, and I don't want to be facing ice and snow in that area. And for reasons of vehicular safety, I always back my car into my driveway. And I'm getting kind of old. It's hard for me now to back up, and I just wanted as wide a area to back up into, and that's my case. I also have a letter from my next door neighbor who is on the other side of the driveway, and they are enthusiastic supporters of what I want. They say as long as I don't threaten the tree line that they put up along in between our two houses, they're all for it.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Oh, you have a letter?
Yes.
Okay.
I like that tie. A highway, oh, it's an airport, okay, a runway, okay. Instrument approach.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Mr. Melnick?
All right. And so in case Z1120116UP1, I move that the Arlington Board of Zoning Appeals grant the use permit as stated in the attached resolution with the conditions as stated.
I will second that motion, but I would
Can-
ask for a
Okay.
friendly amendment.
Moved by Mr. Melnick, seconded by Ms. Malice. Ms. Malice?
I would like to add a friendly amendment to add a condition to the resolution that addresses the tree line that the neighbors spoke about. So I'm got to think of one. If anybody is in agreement and has one off the top of their head, jump in. I would say that it's the construction, the carport shall be built in such a way as not to damage the adjoining tree line.
Is that acceptable to the maker of the motion?
That's fine.
So that was
That was a unanimous consent request, right?
That was a unanimous consent request.
We good? Moved and seconded, and with an additional amendment regarding the tree line, preservation of the tree line. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Nay. None. 0, 5-0. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm tired. Next case, please.
V-11202-16-UP-1 is a use permit request to permit a setback of 8 feet to the wall from the rear property line instead of 10 feet as required for a corner lot. The staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Questions for staff? Here, applicant, please.
Good evening. My name is Tim Van Vano. I'm the builder, and this is the owner. You want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Brian Quarles. I'm the homeowner. My wife, Danielle, she's out on the Eastern Shore with our boys until we come through the renovation. We did purchase the house in 2009. We've certainly immersed ourselves in Arlington. We're very active in activities, soccer and scouts and running groups. We have certainly discussed the planned renovation with all of our neighbors. We have 8 surrounding neighbors. All have expressed their full support for our renovation, and we've been very pleased working with Tim and his company. They've been wonderful to work with, wonderful for the design, the concept, the drawings. They've done recent work in our neighborhood that have just gotten rave reviews. So appreciate your hearing our case this evening.
Questions for the applicant? Mr. Owen?
So your property does not immediately back up on another house's property, right?
Yes, sir.
What is the nature of the property your house backs up onto?
It's county property. Bit of a
swale.
Swale. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
So it's basically it's a place where water goes when heavy rains come, right? Okay.
Other questions?
Just curious if the county has an interest in this, I guess that's to staff. When the county adjoins a butts property, do they have an interest in this matter?
Let me rephrase the question, if you don't mind, Commissioner Malice.
They didn't show up.
If you don't mind, thank you. So you notify abutting property owners of use permit requests, right? In this case, did you notify Arlington County of this request? As an abutting property owner?
Your supervisor is nodding yes.
Yeah, I mean, I have to assume that they were, because whenever the notices go out, we do, populate those notices by indicating the adjacent properties. But I don't have any record of the notices that were sent out with me to confirm that that was the case.
Madam Chair, let me follow up to that. This is the next to last case. The owner, would that be the Office of Budget, or you have an office that manages county assets?
The real estate department, right? Is that the?
I don't know. I'm asking.
We do.
So that's who the notice would go to? The county does it.
Whatever information is on the tax assessors.
But this is not, the county doesn't pay tax on its own land, right?
Whoever's listed for the RPC is the owner.
Right.
This is where it would go.
Madam Chair, I would wonder if maybe the board should ask staff, since clearly the information is not going to be available tonight, I would still be curious about the answer. And so I'm wondering if the board might be interested in asking staff to follow up in some other way to inform us how this is handled and who it goes to.
Because let's say it's parkland and you have the Friends of the Luma, et cetera, who might have an interest in knowing that there's something proposed to impinge on their.
Interesting example you picked.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I offer to the chair as a potential question from the board to staff.
Duly noted. Thank you.
In the meantime, I'd like to move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution approving use permit V11202-16-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed in the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Malice, seconded by Mr. Owen. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Last case.
V-11203-16-UP-1 is a use permit request to permit a setback of 6.5 feet to the base instead of 10 feet as required, and 5 feet to the eave instead of 6 feet as required from the left side property line. This is regarding a new side porch. The staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution granting the use permit with conditions.
Questions for staff? Hear from the applicant, please.
Good evening. This is my second time in front of you. You all are kind enough to give me a variance to construct a new addition on the back of our house a year ago, and that's about 80% complete. What we're coming here, or what I'm here for this evening, is to get permission to add a porch roof over our side entry stoop. There's a little history here. Unfortunately, the site plan that accompanied the approved building documents that we submitted, unbeknownst to us, didn't correctly show on its site plan the stoop, nor its dimensions at all. But the drawings, as you can see in the attachment, showed the porch and showed the roof and so forth. So when we discovered this, when we did our first wall check on our foundation, the surveyor said, whoa, I need to give all these dimensions to the county, not just that. You need to go in. So I went in and I talked twice to planning and once to a construction section representative for what my alternatives here might be. And what they said sort of in a final analysis was, no, you really need to go back resubmit this whole thing and just see what you all will allow us to do. I stopped work on pouring the stoop at all. We just continued forward on what we knew was allowable. And so we're kind of in a holding pattern until we get a decision here. And that's really it.
Questions for the applicant?
Minor question. I'm just looking at your letters of support. There's 2 letters from 2613.
Right.
Is that intentional?
Well, they're a couple.
Okay, but that same,
They both wanted to have a say.
okay. Understand?
Let them, you know.
Understand, thank you.
Did you submit a letter from the neighbor closest to the work in
Well,
2610?
yeah, there's a story. I want to be forthright, and I did tell them that I would represent them. They're very dissatisfied with not only the addition, but really any more work that we might do on the house. Quite upset. So speaking for them, I've done that. He said also that he did not want to submit something that declined, nor would he appear this evening to talk out against it. So yes, that's why he's not here. So yeah, I didn't know until I took the letter over. I had no idea, because they're kind of a reticent couple. They're not very outspoken. So until I went over and said, would you mind, because they had no objections to the first variance. I was sort of surprised by the response.
Repeat, I didn't really understand what you said.
Unhappy with.
Oh, unhappy, okay.
Happy with everything we've done, and also this, because he sees it sort of piling on.
Sometimes the disruption of the construction itself, the noise and the disturbance, has a strong effect on people's mood and attitude about this. So one thing you might want to consider is whether or not, if you get an approval tonight, some outreach to your neighbor to see if maybe there's ways you can instruct the contractors to conduct their work in a way that's more commodious with your neighbor might be helpful to neighborly relations.
I got to do something. He's not very far away. But so one thing, the reason for the porch, I just want to just add this if I could. I'm not out of turn here. Is it gains us 2 things. One is it gains us a little protection over the side entrance, which we would welcome versus just a stoop. And the other thing, if you just real quickly just take a look at the, let's see if it would be A4. You should have a sort of a series of elevations here. If you just take a look at the bottom right one, it's the north key elevation. You can see the little covered porch right there on the first. It's just a 1-story porch that comes off. And one of the reasons it's kind of more aesthetic than anything else is that we have sort of a shotgun house that we sort of developed as it goes back. It's rather plain and so forth. And by having this over top of that porch, it would sort of break it up a little bit and make it more attractive from the street. So.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to move this item.
Ms. Malice?
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution approving use permit V11-203-16-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed in the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Malice, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
I'll now ask for the approval of the October minutes, acknowledging that I was not there and that unfortunately I didn't beat the time tonight by 5 minutes.
A valiant attempt, Madam Chair. I note that in the also present list at the very top, Amanda Clement is listed as the acting BZA coordinator, and I think we appointed her at the end of the September meeting. Secretary. Oh, I see. Got it. So Ms. Clement was indeed the acting BZA coordinator at the time.
Why isn't it signed as secretary as opposed to the job title versus the appointed position that she really is to the board. Yeah, and she's the...
Secretary.
At the top.
Okay, yeah, there. But and also the notice, the public notice, it says acting zoning administrator.
Maybe in our official records, Ms. Clement is best referred to as the secretary in all instances. That seems to be right to me.
But for the purposes of the notice, this is a BZA notice, right? This is a notice of the Board of Zoning Appeals. As the secretary, aren't you publishing this notice?
Yeah.
Work it out.
I mean, that was what, I'm glad you raised that, Peter, because I saw that when I was going through, and I'm like, but I guess I kind of object to acting anyway. I don't really like to see that before titles. Anyway.
Anyone actually have any changes to the minutes?
Madam Chair, I move the adoption.
Like we could find some.
I present it.
Second, please.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
I abstain. Move adjournment.
I move the adjourn.
I'll second.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Melnick. Bye-bye.